Welcome to the Enchanted Earth podcast, where you will hear stories of nature with the power to transform our lives. These sacred stories are begging to be shared now. So listen in as my guest today shares one of their own. So welcome everybody. Today we have a real treasure, Pete Nelson. So let me tell you a little bit about Pete. Pete Nelson fell in love with tree houses as a child after building a backyard tree fort with his dad at their home in New Jersey. Today, he has created hundreds of tree houses around the world with his design and build firm, Nelson Treehouse and Supply. Pete has also published 6 books on the art and science of treehouse building, most recently, Be in a Treehouse. He has also shared many of his builds with global audiences as the star of the hit Animal Planet television series Treehouse Masters, which I love. In all of these projects, Pete has also endeavored to equip others with the information and inspiration to get out into nature and up into the trees in a safe and sustainable and fun way. So welcome, Pete.
Thank you, Maureen. It's really nice to be here.
I know your famous line is to the trees.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And of course, as many people who are watching this discovered you on that show, and it is not just a show about trees, though. There's just a real warmth and love for nature that comes across in your in the way that you deliver your show and the people that you work with, and of course, yeah, your group as well, your team.
It was beautifully portrayed. I'm so grateful for the people at Animal Planet that they allowed us to, be ourselves and yet also do some good editing, because they could have made a different show. Let me assure you. It was this is a business, and building tree houses is, yes, fun, and it's just to me, I followed this path to this end, and it's been just a beautiful journey, and all the fun and adventure that we've had.
You just brought up something that I've been dying to ask you since we talked last time, and I would have forgotten. So thank you for reminding me. On the show, there's a segment when you are first getting to the land and you're talking. Of course, part of this is staged because I'm sure you figured a lot of this out, where you're going to build the trees, but you do always have an experience of walking the land, discovering the right trees, and you kind of sit with them and come up with your plan of what to do. Can you just share a little bit about how you pick the trees, not from a physical sense, but maybe from a more metaphysical sense?
Oh, that's a fun question, and I'm often asked, how do we find these trees? And it's all great news. The fact is that, when you go out into the woods, there will be places that immediately speak to you, and it's true for the clients as well. I mean, they'll often, I'd say 50% of the people will have an idea of where they'd like their treehouse to be, and they're right every time, because all you need to do is go out into the woods, and with an open mind, you can start to say, okay, well, what is attracting me? Where am I naturally drawn to? And of course, it's the trees themselves. They're out there, and when you spend a little bit of time just really looking, it's become it really isn't it isn't a problem. I mean, I'd worried about that at the beginning of all this many years ago too. Like, how are we going to pick the trees? And again, the news is great. You get out there, and bam, they will show up. And we joke half the time, because in the show we have music that would play. We'd go into the trees, and then and it was always fun to play that up. But it felt very real in that, when you find these trees, they're speaking to you, and if you're listening, I mean, the music can be loud. It's just like, wow, here, I mean, problem solved. And that's the first of many, challenges. Challenges is a stronger word. You've got an idea in mind of what you'd like to create. So you run into, okay, well, are these trees going to be big enough or strong enough or long lived enough? There's trees that you want to avoid naturally, and I think a lot of us know what those trees are just almost intuitively when we've been on this earth for a few decades. Where the ones that are around for a while, you already know oak trees, redwoods, Doug firs. There's a lot of great trees out there that live for a long time, and you want to put your tree houses in those. Opening up, and once you find these trees, then you have the issue of, okay, well, what's this? How's this going to look, and what's the floor plan? And they all seem like, boy, how do you do that? And it's just, I think, a natural ability for all of us to if you take the time and you sit with the trees like you're describing, you can really start to envision how you might fit into those trees in a way that you'd like to. Um, you know, it comes naturally in a lot of ways, and I know that's hard to hear if you're not really inclined to do this sort of design work, but if you open yourself up to the possibilities and allow your intuition to kind of work for you, um, you'd be surprised because the trees are giving us everything we need.
Absolutely, right. It's kind of like we're in dialogue whether we realize it or not.
Hmm.
We might be thinking that our mind is going and making these logical choices, but there's something going on underneath that if we just open ourselves up. And I love that you say that like half of your clients already know where. And again, it is not just a logical choice. It is where their heart feels pulled.
Hmm.
And it's because those trees are calling out to them too. And I think that is just so magical, and when people realize, for the first time that, "Oh, it's not just me saying that's a beautiful tree, there's something else going on there," people are just like, "Wow."
Yeah, yeah. There's a book that for many years has been out there. I think it was published in the late '70s called A Pattern Language. Um,
Yes.
it's a great kind of it's a it's a Bible for architects and designers that sort of talks about the unwritten rules of architecture, and something that I've butted up against in that text a lot is, when you look at a woods and a natural environment, when they talk about siting a home, one of the parables is to say, let's not go to the nicest place because you can't improve that, right? You might be inclined to go to the top of the hill or the most beautiful spot on your property and build your house there, where you might want to think about it differently, where maybe you site your house to where you can have a good view of that beautiful sacred spot. And I've run into this so much in the woods where you're drawn to these beautiful places. The trees are so set just right, and I fight this all the time because I think, well, wait, this is so beautiful and so perfect. And yes, I'd have a hard time improving it with our own efforts, but boy, I really have to be there. Like these trees are set up in such a perfect way. And I often use multiple trees. I mean, it's rare that you have a big tree that can support, your hopes and your dreams and in one tree, but multiple trees set up in a grove. And I mean, you can just see in your mind's eye what I'm
Mm.
describing. And it's just so pretty. How are you gonna, how are you gonna improve that?
Yeah.
Well, that's the struggle because now you just jump into the middle of that beautiful place, and maybe you're lucky and you've got other places around you that maybe you're overlooking a lake or a river or a field, and yeah, you grab that grove of trees that are just spaced so perfectly where you can put a few beams between them and lickety split, you have your platform and you're building your little dream treehouse. So it is a funny balance there, and uh, I do like that description where how can we improve that? But so many times I've told the same story to clients and they'll go, okay, yeah, I hear you, but no, we're building in there.
Yeah, well, I guess it's their treehouse.
It's their treehouse. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to argue with the beauty of nature though, even in the areas that you feel like you can improve. It's just so fun to be in the woods, in the trees, be able to work with them. And yeah, that whole process of trying to distill your thoughts into a platform that works, and then from there creating what sits on top of that it's all just a really, I think, a kind of a meditation in a way, a really fun meditation.
Well, you're certainly living your passion. And I love to see people living their passion because there's just such a luminosity to people. There's just a joy when they're doing what they really love. And it's so evident that you are.
Well, that's nice to say, and I really I see it in our own team too. We've got a lot of really creative, talented carpenters, craftspeople. Even in the back office, I mean, a lot of people are being made happy with these tree houses, and it seems to filter through to everybody, and it's just fun that we've attracted those type of people.
Yeah, definitely. Like attracts like.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
um, I believe you have a story about an experience that kind of shifted your perspective on things a bit.
There's so many stories, and when I was imagining, okay, what would I like to tell in terms of what the trees and how I've been um, interacting with trees, and one story that I know we talked on the phone when you're writing your book, and I described this incredible time in the redwoods of Northern California. But there's another story too that jumps out at me, and it was an interesting one in that I started to, I don't know, I personifying trees is a dangerous business. You come to treat trees as though they are sentient beings. It feels to me like they're making choices and decisions about what to do when, for instance, our hardware goes into the tree themselves. They're sending sap and compartmentalizing this wound that we've created. And so there's something thinking within these trees. I guess I grew up with a mother that would talk to her houseplants, and that was a thing in the 70s where it was deemed to be healthy to talk to your plants, and so I kind of, eh, not, I mean, I have to say I think of it as more of a joking, that I'm talking with these trees, but it for some reason feels really good to me to be imagining that these are beings, and so fairly early on in my career of creating these grown-up tree houses, as I call them, it was the mid '90s where I went out to, um, it was near Libby, Montana, and a friend of mine, Albert Green, wanted to build a tree house in a big ponderosa pine, and man, this was probably 4 feet through at the base, big, beautiful, old ponderosa pine. Those are the ones with that kind of cinnamon bark with big patches, and they're just often standing alone, or at least separated by quite a distance. And we were in this one beautiful tree, and when you go up to a tree like that, it's just truly awesome. You just go, oh my gosh, this tree has been here, sitting right here for its entire existence, getting everything it needs, you know, water, sun, but going through Montana winters and blows and gales, and yet, it thrives, and it becomes this beautiful thing that you just can't help but respect deeply. And we charged into this again. I think it was 1996, and I was working on creating a more of a how-to book. The second book that I worked on, I thought I'd jump right into how do you do this? We'd learned a lot in the few years that we were building these grown-up tree houses, and so I thought it would be good to um, talk about how we go about this. So the effort was documented, and but you only have a certain amount of time. I took time off from my regular job. I was building single family houses at the time, and you get the wife to sign off on something like this, where, oh, I'm going to head out to Montana for 10 days and build a tree house and make no money. And you know maybe you'd come with. In fact, she did come with us, and the kids all did too. But yeah, 4th of July, it was that time, and we get to this beautiful tree and just jump right in. The branches start about 30, 40 feet up, and so we're throwing our ropes up into the tree, and we were using a lot of block and tackle at the time. We were a little unfamiliar with rigging and in the early days, but the old school block and tackle, you can pull things up. And what I found to be kind of mind blowing is that the tree honestly felt like it was upset. Like we were throwing ropes and, all of a sudden it feels like, we're going to a wild Mustang and we're going to lasso it or something. And we're throwing these ropes up into the high branches and then we're pulling on, and the block, the block would often just wrap around itself and for no reason. Like it was like strange energy, like really like, I'm picking up that this tree is not happy. I mean, whereas when I think about talking to the trees or like the house plants, I think, oh, they like it. You're giving them some attention. I like scratching them and hugging them and saying how beautiful it is. And I'm doing all of that. In fact, we would do a ceremony in the early days where we would say, we'd bury garlic around the roots and say, look, let's ward off all the evil spirits. We're being a little hooey, but it's fun. We were just trying to create ceremony around it, right? Ritual.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of that in my life. So I began doing that more. I don't do it as much as I used to, but it was something that I was doing very consciously, and finding the tree to react in the way that it did, I was quite surprised. And in the end, what happened was the we got up into this tree, and yes, there were issues and things fouling and jamming, and then over the period of a couple of days, things started to ease a lot, and we got the platform up into the tree, and then we're up in those beautiful boughs where the branches are. When you get up into an old tree like that, and you see that no one's ever really been up here before, no human anyway, and you see the moss just so, and the natural beauty of it, and you really go, "Oh, wow, this is so special." And talking amongst ourselves, I've really felt the energy completely shift, and the tree began to just welcome us, and we became like a part of it. And it was very, very much evident to me anyway that the energy in that tree shifted, and I felt like, oh man, we're friends. We won this tree over, and it worked, and it worked, and it worked beautifully. And we built this wonderful tree house. And um, so that was about 30 years ago. And I can't say Albert sold the property. I have no idea if the tree house is still there. I hate to say,
Yeah.
um, but what a great experience to feel that and know, okay, this isn't just in my head. I'm feeling some real energy, and what fun to be present for that.
Wow. Wow. So that must have been a lesson to learn that I would imagine ever since then, pretty much I am sure
Mhm.
you, even if it's subconsciously, are connecting to the tree or the trees to let them know what you're going to be doing before you even get up there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I think from that story I told you about the redwoods, when we went into the headwaters forest, and that was around the same time, the early '90s, when they were about to cut an enormous old private growth of redwoods, and the energy there was very different. The trees, it felt to me like they were. You walk into if you're coming into a forest like that, they assume you're going to come and just chop them all down, and that it's tense. But you're right. I mean, I guess I was kind of consciously trying to put the tree at ease at the beginning and say, look, we're here in peace, and that's part of what the ritual was about. We want to enjoy and have a relationship that is more symbiotic, and so yeah, it's trying to let your intentions be known, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, your little ritual of burying the garlic was in essence not just warding off, negative energy, but it's also an offering to tree.
Yeah, yeah. Who doesn't
You know,
love garlic too, right?
right. They could be cypress trees, Italian trees.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, giving an offering to a tree, it could be anything. And really, more than anything, it's just um expressing your intentions and also gratitude
Yeah,
and
gratitude and
respect.
respect. Yeah. Yeah.
And don't we all want that?
Yeah.
I mean, really, in our personal relationships, you know,
Mm.
that is kind of our highest, expression, right? Is when we're in relationship and we're giving honor and respect to the other. Um, we need to consider that to all of the beings of nature.
Yeah.
That same level of respect and honor.
Yeah.
And then they work with us.
Exactly. Yeah. It really does feel like, in these many years now of doing this, that there is that, relationship now that can be any tree anywhere, and us, um, you know, putting ourselves in their branches and being part of them. Now it's, I know full well we use wood like mad in our tree houses. So, it's a double-edged sword here, because sure is wonderful to be in the presence of a beautiful tree up in it, so to say. And then yet we're also here in the Northwest where I am, I'm looking at clear cuts all over the place. They're going up to the second and third time, and I have no problem with that. I want to be clear, Maureen. I mean, it's awful to imagine the old days, and who knew back then that we would run out of trees. They were just hardworking people that were in the woods taking down the trees to create homes for all of us everywhere. And noble job, of course, and dangerous too. Holy smokes! But just incredible adventure there back in the day. Who thought? And they never thought they would run out of trees. I mean, naturally. But here we are. And so going back up there for the second and third time now, harvesting trees that are 35, 40 years old, I see it as, okay, the past is the past. Here's, a corn crop, so to speak. We've got a renewable source of building material that we take full advantage of. And I think it's a great resource. So yeah, it's a tough thing to sometimes watch and see that, oh gosh, that beautiful side of the mountain is being taken. And I'm sure there are more sustainable practices these days that are being employed. And I know that that's the case. But yeah, it can be tough on someone that hasn't, doesn't understand what's really happening there.
Right. I mean, just the sound of the chainsaw is
Hmm.
horrible to hear. I live in the suburbs of Long Island, New York, and you know, uh we live in a very wooded area, a beautiful neighborhood, and I feel like there's so many people that don't they're attracted to the neighborhood
Hmm.
because of the trees.
For
And then when
sure.
they get there, they're like, "Well, I don't want any trees on my property because they make such a mess."
Oh, darn. Oh,
And because, we got to get sun for the pool, and then we don't want the leaves and the acorns in the pool, and
yeah.
yeah, but this is why they moved here in the first place.
No kidding. No kidding. Well, I was born in Mineola. You know where
I
that
know,
is?
I know. I believe we talked about, didn't
Oh,
you
good.
have
Okay.
some ventures in Babylon or something? Because I
Yeah.
grew up in Babylon.
Okay. Right there. Right there.
Yeah,
Fun.
yeah.
Love it. My grandparents lived in Brookhaven, just a little further out, and loved visiting that area. In fact, yeah, I have pangs to go back and visit sometime. In the summer, especially, of course.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the best time.
Yeah.
So I am curious. I love this story that you just shared about your friend's treehouse and this beautiful ponderosa pine. I'm curious. Have you really shared that experience with others before?
I have, and I'm a little. I don't love to share it, only because it is such a one of these stories that you kind of go, all right, well, I mean, that was my experience, and I felt it very strongly. So I have no problem talking about it with you in this, talking about this stuff. But it is something that I I probably pick of the people that I want to talk to about that more.
Yeah. And I so get it. And in my experience, actually, while I was writing this book and interviewing people um, for it, I heard that quite a bit. That, I actually even heard from some people, this is the first time I ever shared this story.
Mm,
And I felt incredibly gifted and honored that they decided to share it with me. Um, but there's such a loss with that because these stories, I think a lot of these, I think many people have these types of stories
mm,
of
mhm,
some kind of sentience from wildlife or trees or some kind of, or even a mountain. I mean,
mhm,
anything in nature. And we don't like to talk about it because people will think we're a little nuts or, yeah, a little woo woo
yeah,
or
yeah,
why? And I think it's so important now to talk about these stories more than ever so we
mm,
can like normalize it. This is what it is to be human. We have ignored this sacred,
mm,
deep connection with nature for too long. And
mhm.
these stories are so important because I am sure somebody who's listening to you go, you know what? I I remember a time that I thought a tree was connecting, is saying something, or I was feeling something, but I just dismissed it. But maybe it's real.
Yeah.
How many people could be impacted by
Yeah.
hearing just one of our stories?
Well, I think so many of us, it's hard to deny when you take a walk in nature and you've got your life that's busy and full of all kinds of things that can be stressful but if you spend that time in nature, I think it's undeniable that all of us are going to feel a relief and a you realize that how I guess puny we are, compared to nature and all of our worries and stresses can sort of take a back seat while you
Mm.
breathe that clean air and you walk along that beautiful gurgling brook and look at, just, you can't help. I mean, of course, you've got to be careful to pay attention. I mean, this is the thing. I think nature almost forces you to pay attention when you're in the right place, and you'll find yourself finally back where you need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that is an important thing that you just said about, yeah, being out in nature is um it it's wonderful and it can do so many, positive things for us, but also we do have to kind of be on our guard.
Yeah.
We can't just completely be like, "Oh, it's nature and I'm relaxing." Yeah, I mean, yes, we are relaxing, but we're
Mhm.
also aware and observing.
Yeah. 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 Shinrin Yoku, you've heard about this. Of course, the Japanese have had this going on for, I don't know, centuries. I don't even know, but forest bathing is the translation. So, um, in my experience growing up, I had a dad that was a forester, or he went to forestry school anyway, and he was always big on getting in the woods. And I'm so grateful for that experience as a young person walking in the woods with my dad. But it would often be, going from point A to point B. We're going to travel 8 miles with our backpacks, and we're going to and yet this concept of Shinrin Yoku, where you're forest bathing, you're spending more time just observing, as you say, and just looking about, and you're not charging through the woods. You're sort of meandering and yeah, paying attention. Um, and that's I don't know, maybe it's my sort of ADHD way of being that I'm always seemingly charging along here. But when you do take the moment to go, oh well, let's have a look at that interesting mushroom there. or the leaf pattern. And what is that? Is that an elm leaf? I'm still kind of wondering, is that or is that, uh, what was I thinking? There's so many different, I mean, thousands of different trees, and I'm often thinking of just that, like, what kind of leaf is it? But paying attention and maybe listening to that gurgling brook instead of walking by it so quickly.
Um, okay, so now I have a question. I was just talking with another tree person. He's
Mhm.
an ex-arborist, and we were just talking about, like, the naming, the being able to name the trees, and I was talking about it from, learning about birds and their
Mm,
calls and from their coloring what they are. And I was just kind of sharing with him how kind of frustrated I am because I'm not like learning very well. And even trees, I'm out and I'm like, well, I know that's a white oak, I think, and that's a red oak. um but you know there's a kind of an idea of these are just labels that we've put onto these trees.
mhm.
So, I just wonder, we trying to learn about nature, but it's more from a mental sense when maybe we should just focus on the feeling sense.
Interesting. Yeah. No, I like what you're saying. I like that a lot. Because I mean, I don't, how many thousands of tree species are there? And this guy, the treehouse guy, is supposed to know all of them, and I have to say that I don't. I mean, I'll go into a part of the country where I mean, is that a sweet gum or what is that? And yeah, there are too many to know. And I can imagine the same with birds because I have a friend that's really into birding, and it's it's interesting because boy, I get confused quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I like the idea of just, feeling it, and that's it. And that's part of when I was describing, the trees that are long living type trees versus the ones that aren't. I think, there's if you're involved at all in nature in that way, if you're an arborist or if you're a naturalist, or just everyday living, the trees that are the ones that seem to be more like around for a short period of time doing their thing, putting nitrogen back into the earth, and then the primary trees will come in. That the Northeast, having grown up in New Jersey, I love all those great hardwoods that we've got back there, big, beautiful maples and oaks. And boy, we don't have a lot of those out here in the West. We've got some big trees, obviously, but I always love going back east and seeing those mature hardwoods that are so, boy, spectacular, magnificent, a lot of them. But yeah, it's a feeling more, right? Than, oh, why do I have to know that's an elm or whatever it is? I mean, let's just
Yeah, I
get
mean, it's like,
the beauty of them.
obviously there's reasons to learn them, so what are longer lasting tree, there's good reasons to learn about trees from that perspective, but to get closer to nature,
Yeah.
maybe not.
Yeah, the cottonwoods, I'm suddenly like, yeah, there's some beautiful monster cottonwoods, but boy, they'll drop a branch that's 2,000 pounds out of nowhere, and you don't really want your treehouse in those cottonwoods. Messy trees too, but you know, it's one of those things where yeah, you do want to know a little bit about what these trees you know, before you put a big project in there.
Absolutely, absolutely, of course. Yeah. So, do you have a an early childhood experience in nature that maybe was foreshadowing what you're doing
Mm.
now?
Well, my dad and I, he was intent on building this treehouse in our backyard in New Jersey. I think I was probably 7 or so. Um, but I'll never forget. I mean, that was the thing. He went to forestry school in Syracuse, New York, and and so it was always very much into, nature walks. We'd go up to Harriman State Park just over the border in New York, and I'll never forget. It's just like yesterday in a way, walking in the winter when you've got that dead silence of a new snow, and you're walking through, and he's showing me the different leaves, as a dad might, and here's a birch, here's, those great white bark birch trees. And yeah, I'll never forget that feeling of being out there with him in the woods and observing this stuff and the dead silence of a new snow, and just be like, wow, this is really special. And then in our backyard, building this treehouse was all his idea, but he thought it'd be a great project for the weekends. I mean, he was a working stiff, and so we'd have our weekends, and yeah, that experience of creating a space just for myself, like that sovereign. Oh, got my leg coming back. Dogs are gonna bark. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Um, but yeah, a place of your own. That first experience when I was about that age, just creating something that was my own space, that had my own rules. Um,
Yeah.
I'm afraid Willie's going to be barking for a moment while Beauty comes back. Right back there. Willie, come here. They go on for a while, I'm afraid.
What kind of dog?
It's a Chihuahua, a little irate.
It's just so funny. I'm expecting you to say like a golden retriever, I could peg you with a golden retriever,
I love a
not a
golden
Chihuahua.
retriever. We got two Chihuahuas, and then we have another one that's kind of like a golden retriever, but it's one of these Bernese mountain
dogs
with a lab mix. In fact, here she comes.
Oh
my God!
Hello.
Hello. Next reading. Oh, that's
Aw. Oh, very
back
cute.
from a walk. Those early memories of being in nature, in the trees like that, were profound. I think one of the reasons that I came to treehouse building for my career is that I recall very clearly the daydreaming that I would do, in that elementary school time, where we'd been working on that treehouse. Well, that treehouse leads to the next treehouse and the next project and the next project, and my mind would always go out into the woods and creating. And there was a book, Richard Scarry, I've heard him call, What Do People Do All Day? That great illustration. They were all, he did a number of books, but they were all these illustrated books where the animals were doing things like, it was like they were dressed up in clothes, but the plumbers, the carpenters, the bus driver, all the different things. What do people do all day? The grocer, and they were all animals, cats and pigs and dogs, and they had their, and there was, I'll never forget the carpenters, and they built this very simple treehouse that even, an 8-year-old could go, sorry, it wasn't a treehouse. It was a house, but it was just, built like you would build a house. You put the joists down for the floor joists. You'd put the studs up vertically, and you could just see them. Oh, that's what you do. Like 2x4s. What are those? Yeah, okay. And then you got the peak. You just give it that. Okay, and then they'd even nail a little sprig up at the top, which is a German tradition. Like when you put the roof on, you'd nail a little bough of a tree, a little tiny tree up there as good luck, or whatever that tradition was in Germany. But that stuck with me as a kid, and I thought, how about this? You could be doing things like this all day instead of what have you, any other thing that you could do on this earth. And that really struck a note. And I would think, a carpenter now, that, so that really did lead to the idea when it was time to really say, okay, school's done. What do I want to do with myself? And I'd always kind of gravitated to that, hands-on creating, building. The treehouse thing was important. I mean, I started building single family homes. That's what I did right out of college. I just thought, let's try this. It would be fun to, a lot of creating basically, but planning and drawing, and then being able to build those very, same type of things, a little bigger, but those early days very much led to where I came to. And then, and to finish the story of how I got into the treehouse side, it was a lot of those houses were more complicated and took longer than I ever wanted them to take. So when I was really well into building single family homes, kind of one at a time as I did it out here, um, I would daydream more, just like I did in elementary school, about how about a more simple, hurry up, fun, my ADHD would kick in and be like, I can't wait 5 months for a permit, to build a house. By the time I'm framed with it, I'm done. I mean, I want to move on. I'm bored. So a tree house in its smaller scale would sort of scratch that itch. And so that's what drew me to all of this is, let's go back to our roots and imagine creating fun, manageable spaces, conditioned spaces, so we're not freezing up there, and we're just, bring those same comforts of home up into a tree. How about that? That would be,
Oh, there's just something so, yummy about tree houses. I know it really calls to me and some people as well, right? It just kind of sparks our imagination of childhood.
hmm oh, it really does. It really does. And this market that I'm sort of working in is it's the grown-ups, and they've all had the same, idea for their entire lives. It feels like the people that we're building for, this is them finally having their dream come true.
Yeah, I mean, some of the tree houses you build, it's like, why do you need that house over there? You could rent that on Airbnb and live in this.
Yeah. No, I just came from last week. It doesn't have a happy ending, only because the guy, I think, just decided he didn't need his treehouse. But I was so excited last week. I went out to a mansion. I mean, oh my gosh, this place, it was 16,000 square foot house, big mansion. And the guy was like, I can't handle it. I need my own little place. And so we were charging off in the direction of creating a little, I think, no, I even drew it. In fact, we spent that afternoon at his dining room table drawing this treehouse together, and it was so fun. And maybe 300 square feet, and it was his. And he was going to have one of those desks that raises up because he's got a bad back. So he was just dreaming, and then, well, as it turns out, the area that we were going to go for was a little bit of a critical areas. You have them all over the country. We've got a little brook going by, and there's setbacks to all this, and we understand all that. So he decided he better not go there in the end. That was just last week, but there it is.
Oh,
You've got all these beautiful homes, and then you can have something that's a little more human scale, right? Um,
yeah.
that you can just, that's all you need,
Yeah, a tiny home.
a tiny home.
Tiny home in the trees.
Yeah. Yeah. So
That
I think
just
I think that's all we need, and yet at the same time, okay, it's fun to have, I don't know, extra space. I guess we can fill it up. We do. Yeah.
use it for storage of clutter.
Of
It's like a
stuff. Good
shed. No.
stuff. Oh boy, lots of stuff. Yeah.
Oh, well I know I am going to have to, check out your treehouse. What is it called?
The bed and breakfast where we,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Treehouse Point is the one that's
Treehouse
got in,
Point. Mm,
that's in Fall City, Washington. It's just about, well, my New Jersey roots. It's exit 22 on I-90 as you go east from Seattle. Um, but it's really close into Seattle, and it's on the raging river, and it's 7 tree houses that are really beautiful. They're
oh,
small, very small, but romantic. Um,
yeah.
yeah, and there are a few others that we have. We've got some partners around the country. One in Maine, one in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and there's one in Utopia. Believe it or not, the name of a town, Utopia, Texas. Uh, yeah, and
Oh,
we're
that's
working on
cool.
one in Wisconsin now, multiple tree houses. So that kind of hospitality
Yeah.
segment, we're doing more and more of those over, we'll do, usually our bread and butter is really the one-off. We do custom tree houses for the person that is building their dream, and then we're also doing more of this hospitality stuff with getting more people into the trees and having overnight stays and that kind of thing.
Oh, what a unique experience. I think that's just so lovely.
It feels good, putting people into nature is always a good thing, and that's really the basis of it all. Is just, there was a great book. I think we talked about Richard Louv, um, and I remember being struck by that. I think it came out in '08, or there was around that time that it came out, and it was The Last Child in the Woods. You talked a lot about tree houses there, but it really struck a chord in me that was, if we don't get people to fall in love with nature, we're going to lose it, because it needs protection. And if we can put people in tree houses and have them fall in love with nature, then we'll have people out there that are going to fight to protect it. Because I mean, there's a lot of forces out there against us, and it could be paved over if we're not careful.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to ask you for any other insights, closing thoughts you'd have to share. But first, I do want to just say that yes, you and I did speak about Richard Louv and The Last Child in the Woods because both of us, as well as many other people that are in my book, um, had a very clear inspiration from that book
Yeah,
for their life path.
yeah,
It was either a pivot point
mm,
or it was just a confirmation that they're on the right path.
yeah, yeah. Felt like
Yeah.
that was it for me. That was it for me. Like, boy, this is what we have to do, and it's fun. So no
Yeah.
argument here.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, when we're doing something we love, that we're inspired by, it's not work, and not only that, it's what we're here to do.
Yeah,
And, that it is the meaning for our existence here. When
yeah,
we're doing something we love, we're bringing this just wonderful energy to this planet
yeah.
and helping everything. So, yeah, do you have any last words to share?
I'm reaching way back to this idea that I love, which is, um, tree houses are inherently kind of an amateur's game. That they were always seemingly the first structures that a lot of people built in their lives. With their dad or their mom, and they're out there in the backyard and they're creating something. And um, I would just encourage people to get out there and do it. That take take a shot and go out. You don't need any experience. An amateur out there. There's another friend of mine that reminded me that amateur. I always thought of it as like, oh, amateur. That implies that it's going to be kind of crappy. But amour, amateur, amour, love. It's because you love this thing, and so you charge off in this direction because you love the idea of creating something like a treehouse. And so tree houses are sort of amateurism at its best. And I would say, just don't worry about it. Go do it, and get into your backyard and look for the trees. They will call to you. They will. It will take moments before you're finding your tree, and then you go, just imagine. And that might be all you need to do, but imagine the treehouse and imagine what it might be like to create something like this. And do take the next step. If you can, get out there and make it happen. Because when you do this, I promise that you will have a good time, and you will also attract all your friends, your neighbors. Maybe you don't want them, but be careful, because it's true that every time you embark on something like a tree house, you will have a lot of people coming around saying, "Hey, can I help?" And that can be a great thing too.
Yeah. Oh, oh, that's beautiful, beautiful thought. Yeah. Get out into the trees.
Do it.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming on here today, Pete. I really enjoy speaking with you all the time.
Glad to, Maureen. Great to talk with you, and good luck with everything. And carry on. Send your
Oh,
far and wide.
yay, yay. And if you're watching this, I would love to hear your comments, and please subscribe and share with another who would love to hear this podcast. Have a wonderful day.
Okay. Thank you. You too.
Thank you for being a part of the Enchanted Earth podcast. Comment below, share, and most of all, please hit the subscribe button so that you'll hear when we publish another inspiring episode. You can visit us at luminous-spaces.com for more information on our online courses, retreats, and offerings. Thank you and have a magical day.